my entry point essentially would start from the science. And on the basis of the science, there's one fundamental concept which our region needs to be extremely sensitive about, and that is the issue of our vulnerability to climate change. Climate change is an issue that sits first highlighted in 1994 in the Barbados Program of Action. And in identifying that issue, we highlighted very clearly that when we talk about climate change, we're talking about climate change and sea level rise. We never looked at climate change as inclusive of sea level rise. And I'm making this important distinction because most of the discussions, most of the work, when they speak about climate change, they're looking at temperature and precipitation rates.
Yeah, but then isn't it the changes in temperature that causes the sea level to rise?
Yes, but the problem, the point I'm making to you is that the sleeping issue in all of this is the issue relating to sea level rise. It do not get the explicit attention it so desire. And the sea level is rising on a daily basis. So we need to be extremely sensitive and cautious to this particular issue.
You spoke of climate change being discussed in isolation or without the necessary nexus with sea level rises. I don't know if you heard me yesterday when I said the average man on the street does not know that a 1 degree increase in temperature would cause the sea level to rise by a certain amount. I see the two as being inextricably related. I even spoke to the fact that most of our settlements are coastal. And with sea level rises, all of us can be wiped away if we have an experience like the tsunami. I believe there is some island, either Malta or somewhere, I'm not sure of the island now. Because of the low-lying nature of the island, the government, I understood, has secured quite a vast amount of property because by 2025, they expect the sea level to have risen above the level of the land.
And this issue is of extreme importance because, as I pointed out, is that in the current negotiations, many of the developing countries are now jumping on each other to demonstrate who is more vulnerable than whom. And they are opening the discussions with regards to this particular issue, which, from our vantage point, we have been relying largely and exclusively on the science. In focusing on this issue, I think it is also important for us to also recognize that in looking at vulnerability, we have to recognize two other dimensions. We have to recognize the dimension of what is internally inflicted and what is externally imposed. Now, in talking about internally inflicted, there's some serious structural problems which we as policymakers should and need to address. You eloquently raised the issue that climate change is first and foremost an environment issue, which in fact it is. It's an MEA, a multilateral environmental agreement. In many of our countries, the focal points for multilateral environmental agreements are spread across either various ministries or various agencies. And at the same time, the financial mechanism that had been put in place to deal with these MEAs is located in the Ministry of Finance. And very often, the Ministry of Finance do not talk to the mainline focal points that deals with MEAs. And that in many ways poses some significant challenges for us. The second issue is in relation to data. Now, given the scientific nature of the issue we're dealing with, we have to ensure that we put measures in place to deal with the issue of data. Now, very quickly with regards to the externally driven factors, I think in addition to the question with regards to who is vulnerable, who is more vulnerable than whom. We also have to confront the issue regarding conditionalities in terms of accessing the resources. And I think this is a very important element. For SIDS, I've always advocated, from my experience dealing with the JEF, that our marine, coastal, and terrestrial ecosystem are one and the same. This is what our science have demonstrated and have shown. Mm-hmm. And any impact on either one of them has some serious consequences for the entire ecosystem. This is not the case as the larger countries. Now, this is an issue that we have been having serious battles with a lot of the multilateral lending agencies in addressing. And it's an issue that we need to continually raise with them. And this is what distinguishes our ecosystem from most of the other countries, both in terms of the sensitivity and in terms of the vulnerability. So these are some of the issues that we need to be very careful about and always have in the forefront in addressing.
If a funding agency has agreed to fund the research, one needs to ask him or herself of the information if it is not used to change behavioral patterns. And research can be funded, then in my view, dispensing with the information is even more critical than the information that would have been acquired through research. You know, this is very, very, very important. It is okay to say, well, okay, I'm going to find out the cause of AIDS. If you eat this, you eat that, you get AIDS. However, nobody knows what to eat or not to eat to prevent them from getting AIDS. So what's the use of the research? And with that, I believe that there is even greater need, a greater emphasis should be placed on educating the people having done the research.
I would really like to see at least 2 persons trained at the level of master's degree or PhD degree in each island on this issue of climate change. Until when we have such person, the World Bank will continue to tell us what to do. Recently, there was a training program, a diploma program on the economics of climate change. Only 1 person out of the Caribbean went to that training.
My God.
When we don't know the economics of it, when we go to Copenhagen, Cancun, we'll just be trying to ratify recommendations or this. The whole question of the impact of climate change on our social sector, nobody is studying that, I can tell you. And we need to start studying that. We need to start studying the impact on our environment, impact on a whole sort of thing.
I think that it has been a great experience what we have been doing these 2 days. And it's evident that we have to have more dialogues between policymakers, between scientists, between community, because we have a reality. The problem is our own problems, and nobody will come outside to try to solve. So I think that we have to think a little bit more in what a way we have that problem with our academics and our scientific. That's true. Not always they give the results in a way that can be discussed with the policymakers, and not always they make proposition of what to do. But I think it's our own experience in this case that when you talk, you have the possibility, you have a concrete proposition, you can do those propositions, you can introduce those propositions, and you can see that it works. I think that a confiance between everybody increase, and we need to have that way of doing things. And also, now we are going to see what more we can integrate in the cooperation and collaboration. And I think that very, very good experience have been presented this Tuesday, and I think that also scientists and policymakers have a lot of work to do, and to try to, between us, to solve most of the problem that we have, because we have it right now. It's not for tomorrow. It's not for 20 years. We have a lot of problems right now that we have to try to solve. Well, Cuba, like always, if you think that we can be with you, as always we have learned a lot from our Caribbean colleagues. And I think that one of the ways that we have is policy makers, community, and knowledge, not only scientific research, knowledge, because we have a lot of people that don't make science but have knowledge and know perfectly how to solve the problem. I think that will be very good to go far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And speaking of persons with knowledge but without qualifications, I think we in the small island developing states, each and every one of us know of someone who may not have done engineering, but would tell you what size of steel to use to ensure that the structural integrity of a building is not compromised. And he or she can do so without certification. And the young lady spoke to having our people certified, but let us face it, we have some people who are very good with their hands, but who are illiterate. They would not be able to read 2 words, but give them a house plan, and they would execute it to the T. How do you cater for those individuals?
And really, I agree with the sentiment raised about consultant. We have to raise our own consultant from the island.
Yes, very good point.
People who can bring issue papers, people who are hired to say, I'm going to this meeting, give me issue paper on this. I will tell you what happened to me last week. I was unfortunate to go to Antigua for a capacity meeting. And I met this bright lady who wanted everything I can give to Antigua. The lady is in this room. I said, okay, the contract that I have is to give 1 training program. But these are all the 5 or 6 that I can give. You see, Jacob, we want everything. I said, I like that aggression. Until when we can have somebody like this lady in every island who wanted everything for their country, who knows the value of everything that can be done, then we are just going to be relying on external persons. Let me give you in fact, I got an email today. When I was in Antigua last week, I said to do the landslide risk mapping, we need to know the geology, we need to have the soil. They have the soil information on the computer. But I said, where is the soil report? The soil report has so many information. No one knows where to find it. I got an email today that one Dr. Cooper in Antigua has it, but it's his personal copy. And I should go to UWI to go and find it. And I'm saying we have to start taking care of those little things that really matters for us to go forward. But why is it that nobody could find it? It's because there is no soil scientist in Antigua who is passionate to say we need to do this. So I'm saying in looking at the education, I understand the need for education at the grassroots level, but there is some academic knowledge in this area that we need to have in-house that are accessible to us, that we can rely on and say, hey, measure this for me so that when I'm going to that meeting, I want to go with facts. When I mentioned the question of the analysis of what land is left, Antigua said, we want that tomorrow.
I just want to interrupt you for 2 seconds, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Point of order. This is it. When I heard you in Antigua, I sent the police for you. Because you came to the island without consulting me, and then by the time I found that you were there, I sent the police for you with guns and machine guns to pick you up and bring you to me. But I already gotten on the plane and left. And that's why you're having problems now. As the minister responsible for environment, you do not come to my country without consulting me.
Thank you, sir.
Otherwise, you're going to have problems, and then you want me not to solve the problems. If I call this man about this soil test, I would send police to get the information from him if you have it stored someplace. And make sure you have it. Because what you're doing is very crucial to our forward movement.
But in wrapping up,
One understands why you don't want to be the political opponent of Mr. Baptiste.
No, I have to be on his side. Not only will he beat me physically, but mentally as well.
Dr. Jacob just raised an issue about we should have our own consultants. Sitting right next to me is our own, but sometimes even the World Bank don't want to use her. Why? Because they want their own. Now, it's this problem that we face. The problem that we face as small islands is that we are shoveled things that everybody wants us to adopt, to accept, without question. And as you begin to question, you begin to get sidelined because you're asking too much questions. Again, as the chairman just pointed out, how can someone from another place come to tell us about how to live in our own country? How to deal with issues that are germane to the country itself. Issues that we believe that the country itself knows best how to handle. You know, I listened to a lot of things that were said in Cancun, speaking about things that should be country driven, and then when the country tried to drive it, you get a whole set of problems. Because it is just said in words, but indeed, that's not what they want. That's not what some of these funding agencies want. They want to say they've done something for you, which really doesn't mean anything for you. And these are the kind of things I think has created a problem and created the bottlenecks, because the expertise on the ground, and you know, sometimes even researchers would have to speak to the locals to understand what is need to be done. But you find some of these funding agencies do not even want to use the locals because they have their own cronies that they want to give the consultancies, because and they create a whole set of pre-qualifications that really don't make sense. You want a man with 2 doctorates to tell you how to drive a nail, right? When you have people who have been driving nails for hundreds of years and never bent one, but yet they're saying now we need all these qualifications to do something that a local man can do. This, again, I say, is ridiculous. And to me, this is highway robbery. And how do we expect countries to ever adapt, ever grow, ever build capacity, when the very same person that said they are lending you the money is stifling you and squeezing the lifeblood out of you? That's another, to me, this whole thing is another form of neocolonialism.
So, you know, speaking on the small islands remaining small and being unable to develop the people, I mean, you have, everybody here knows that you have the average